in this financial year, we have seen an increase of the aid program by about 400 and close to $500 million, 479 million to be exact, from what was budgeted in the last financial year. And that's, of course, extremely necessary considering just how disastrous 2020 has been for our region, for Australia, for everyone. So we have seen an increase that's been welcome, but it's not. I don't think it's an increase that matches the need in the region, matches the crisis that we are dealing with. And then in 2021-22, we're actually seeing a reduction of that total figure by about 3.2%. Now, I don't think anyone in Australia believes that the COVID situation in the world is going to get better in the next financial year. In fact, by most estimates, it looks like it's going to get worse. So either this government's going to have to find more money in the mid-years, or we're just going to turn our cheek from the desperate need in our immediate region. And this is not just affecting. This doesn't affect people just in this country, in these countries that we're talking about. It also affects Australia. It affects our direct national interests. We see every week COVID cases breaking out in Australia. We can't just wall ourselves off from the outside world as it continues to have this virus running through it.
It also indicates that we are now, considering that it was such a big spending budget, we are among the most mean nations when it comes to foreign aid.
That's right. We're in, when you look at all the rich nations in the world, the OECD, we're right at the bottom third of that group in terms of our generosity in our aid program. You measure it as aid as a proportion of the total income of Australia. It's a proxy measure of GDP. And yeah, we're right down the bottom, alongside new donors like South Korea, countries like Portugal and Greece that were decimated by the GFC. Considering our wealth, considering how well we have done through the COVID crisis, you would have thought we would be right up the other end of the spectrum with the more generous nations, especially considering where we sit in the world. Just look at the map. We are surrounded by developing nations. How is it that Norway, a country that is so isolated from developing world, gives so much more as a proportion of their national income than we do? It just is really baffling.
It was surprising, though, Jonathan, to see in the budget quite a substantial increase to DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, really recognising that there's been a running down of our diplomatic representation.
Well, look, this is absolutely welcome, 50 million a year over 4 years, and that will help give more staff to DFAT in Canberra, more staff to DFAT in our diplomatic network. This is absolutely welcome. The DFAT's budget has remained stagnant for decades now. And whilst we've seen defence go through the roof, development and diplomacy, these are all three pillars of our of a unified foreign policy, have been really run down. And so we're starting to see a rebuild with our diplomats and DFAT. And I think all Australians can appreciate just how hard DFAT has been working this year with all of the consular support on top of all of the heightened geopolitical tensions we're dealing with. You can't argue that they don't have anything to do with that money. It's certainly most welcome.
Yeah. Do you think, considering what we are facing regionally from China, the big freeze that we faced in terms of trade, is there enough to support the diplomats, to support businesses through this precarious time that we are having with one of our biggest trading partners?
Well, look, we do have the Austrade, which is the trade agency sits under the Department of Foreign Affairs. It does help businesses to diversify, and that's of course going to be needed as China is just not going to take many of our exports anymore. We've shown over the last year Australian business has largely been quite successful in diversifying, but of course they will need more assistance in doing that. There's also a lot of Australian export-oriented businesses that rely on international freight and air travel, which has become much more expensive with the collapse of passenger flights as borders have been closed. That support will all have to continue as well. But is it enough? The geopolitical tensions we're seeing today, the bilateral relationship we're seeing with China is really harrowing, and it's really at a low ebb. And so I think we need all the support we can get to help put ballast back into this relationship and to help us, help support Australian businesses to deal with this new contested world.
Jonathan, good to talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.